When the words stop, the truth begins. This is how you hear it. We spend the first half of life accumulating vocabulary. We learn to persuade, to debate, to confess, to lie, to comfort. We treat words like bricks, meticulously laying them down to build towering monuments of identity. This is who I am, we declare with every carefully chosen phrase. We are architects of our own verbose cathedrals. But there is a cruel, quiet architecture that awaits us all. It does not announce itself with a wrecking ball. It arrives like a slow, invisible frost. As the tower begins to weather, the bricks don't shatter or crash to the ground. They simply stop being laid. The mortar of memory grows thin. The hands that once built so furiously now rest quietly in a lap. And we, the younger builders, find ourselves standing in the ruins of conversation. We stare at a parent, a grandparent, a loved one who is undeniably there. Their heart beats, their lungs draw breath, the light of recognition flickers in their eyes. Yet when we extend our hand for another brick, for a word, an opinion, a shared memory, they look back at us with a gaze that holds a lifetime but cannot hand us a single syllable. We panic. We fill the void with our own nervous chatter. We ask the same question louder, slower, as if volume could rebuild a neural pathway. We mistake this silence for emptiness. We call it sundowning, withdrawal, or the long goodbye, but we fail to see the truth. This silence is not an absence of thought. It is a new language, a language stripped of the ornamentation of youth. A language of essence. The words of today, the news, the weather, the breakfast menu, are trapped behind a biological dam. But the vast, deep ocean of feeling behind that dam, it is still there. It is a flood of love, regret, joy, and fear, waiting for a different kind of outlet. This is the silent language of aging. And we, the children of the information age, the masters of the 280-character thought, are, by and large, entirely illiterate. We have forgotten how to hear what isn't said. We have the ears for it, but we have lost the patience. This film is a primer, a guide to relearning the vocabulary of the soul before the final bell rings and the classroom empties forever. Science, in its cold and clinical mercy, offers us a map of this silence. It does not soften the blow, but it names the enemy, and in numbing it, perhaps, it grants us a sliver of compassion. To understand the silence, we must look inside the skull, into the soft, gray machinery of the self. The prefrontal cortex, that is the conductor of our social orchestra. It sits right behind our forehead, a dense thicket of neurons that filters our impulses, plans our future, and most importantly, finds the right words. It is the gatekeeper of wit, the editor of the soul's first draft. When you are at a dinner party and you stop yourself from saying the inappropriate thing, that is the prefrontal cortex slamming on the brakes. But here is the stark, unforgiving truth of neurology. As we age, particularly in the presence of certain diseases, or even just the slow accumulation of microvascular wear, this part of the brain undergoes a process of synaptic pruning. It is not a failure of will. It is not laziness. It is biology's brutal energy-saving mode. The brain, faced with limited resources, makes a strategic retreat. It says, "We can no longer afford the luxury of small talk. We must protect the citadel." Resources are reallocated. They flow away from the social niceties of the frontal lobe and are poured into the brainstem, the ancient reptilian core that keeps the heart beating and the lungs drawing air. And they flow, crucially, into the limbic system, the amygdala, the hippocampus. This is the vault of emotion. This is the archive of long-term memory. This neurological triage explains the cruel paradox of aging. Why can Dad not remember that he asked you the same question 30 seconds ago? Because the recording device of his working memory, the prefrontal scratchpad, is low on battery. The new information, the today data, simply does not stick. It is written in water. But ask him about the color of the car he drove in 1962, or the smell of his mother's kitchen on a Sunday afternoon, or the exact pitch of the crowd's roar when his team won the championship in 1973. And something shifts. The eyes, which were clouded with the fog of the present, suddenly clear. The limbic vault swings open. That memory is not just a file. It is a 4K, full-sensory, immersive experience. It is etched in emotional acid. It is him. And here is the connection we so often miss. He may not have the words to tell you about the car. The bridge from the limbic vault to the speech center is clogged with traffic. He cannot say, "It was a cherry-red Ford Fairlane with a white leather interior, and it smelled like my grandfather's pipe smoke." He just knows it, he feels it, the feeling is intact, the word is trapped. So when he sits in that chair, staring out the window for an hour, he is not zoning out. He is not sundowning. He is traveling at the speed of light through that limbic vault. He is walking through the rooms of a house that no longer exists, filled with people who have long since passed. His silence is not an empty room. It is a crowded, noisy, vibrant reunion of ghosts and laughter and youth. Our mistake is that we stand outside the vault, banging on the door, demanding a verbal tour. We need to stop asking for the map and learn to just sit in the presence of the feeling. The words for today are gone, but the music of forever is still playing. We just have to tune our ears to a different frequency. When the verbal bridge collapses, and we have seen now how the architecture fails, the body does not simply fall into the void. It is too resilient for that. Too ancient in its wisdom. The body finds a new way to speak. It reverts to a language far older than words, a language that predates the first grunt of human utterance. It is the language of texture, of pressure, of movement, and of stillness. It is the vocabulary of touch. And this is where we, the literate children of the modern age, become blind. We are so fixated on the lips, waiting for the sound, that we miss the entire opera being performed by the hands, the shoulders, the angle of the spine. We medicalize these behaviors, we pathologize them. We have a clinical, sterile term for everything. We see an elderly mother folding a paper napkin into a tiny, geometrically perfect square. Over and over again, we call it perseveration. A symptom, a glitch in the motor loop. We see the action, but we do not read it. That napkin is not a napkin. It is a prayer. In a world that is spinning faster than her mind can track, in a world where the furniture keeps moving and the faces keep changing, that napkin is the one thing she can control. The precise fold, the sharp crease, the flat edge, that is order. That is a conversation with the gods of certainty. She is telling the universe, "I am still here, and I can still make this right." We see an old man tracing the grain of a wooden table. His fingertip follows the same whorls and lines for hours. We call it aimless wandering or self-stimulation. We see it as a sign of retreat into a private world, but look closer. That grain is a map, it is a forest. It is the topography of a life lived with his hands. Perhaps he was a carpenter once. Perhaps his father was. That touch is not a retreat, it is a pilgrimage. He is walking through the groves of his memory with the tips of his fingers. He is speaking the language of the wood, because the language of the tongue has failed him. And then there is the grip, the sudden, vice-like tightening of an old hand around your wrist as you help them up from a chair. The knuckles go white, the veins rise. We often interpret this as a physical need for balance. She's afraid of falling, we think, and we are half right, but only half. That grip is not just a request for skeletal support. It is a Morse code of the soul. It is a desperate, wordless transmission that says, "Don't let go, don't leave. Tell me I am not a ghost yet. Tell me you feel me here in this moment, in this world." It is a declaration of existence through pressure. It is the loudest "I love you" or "I am terrified" that a human being can utter without a single decibel of sound. We need to learn to read this Braille of aging skin. We need to understand that the constant straightening of a picture frame is not OCD. It is an attempt to align a chaotic external world with an internal sense of rightness. The clutching of a worn-out handbag in a doctor's waiting room is not just habit. It is a life raft. That bag contains the wallet from her first job, the photo of her husband, the smell of her house. Holding it is holding onto the anchor of self. When we stop looking for the words and start feeling for the meaning in the tremor, the caress, and the grasp, the silence finally begins to break. Not with a shout, but with the quiet, profound hum of a connection that never really needed words in the first place. So we stand at the edge of the chasm. On one side, we have our bustling, verbose world of deadlines, notifications, and opinions. On the other side, we have a loved one sitting in a quiet room, drowning not in silence, but in a language we have forgotten how to speak. How do we cross? How do we build a bridge out of this thick, heavy air? The modern answer, the therapeutic answer, is often more words. We bring photo albums and we interrogate. Who is this? Do you remember this day? We bring music and we ask, do you like this song? Does this make you happy? We bring questions like they are tools. But every question is a demand. Every question is a spotlight shining directly on the very deficit we are trying to ignore. Do you remember? Is the cruelest question of all, because it forces the aging mind to confront the fog in its own machinery. It is a test they know they are failing. The bridge is not built with the timber of interrogation. It is built with a different, softer, and much more difficult material, shared silence. There is a concept in child psychology called parallel play. You see it in toddlers. Two children will sit in the same sandbox playing with their own separate toys. They are not interacting. They are not sharing. They are not speaking. But they are profoundly aware of each other's presence. They are learning the rhythm of just being with another person. It is the foundational stone of all human connection. As we age, we return to this foundation. The complex superstructure of witty banter and political debate falls away, and we are left with the sandbox. We need to learn how to sit in the sandbox again. We need to master the art of doing nothing together. This is harder than it sounds. It goes against every instinct of our anxious, problem-solving Western mind. We feel the silence as a vacuum, and we rush to fill it with noise. We feel the stillness as a sign of depression, and we try to jolly them out of it. We ask, "Are you okay? What are you thinking about?" We need to stop requiring them to perform conversation for our comfort. When we sit down and ask nothing, we grant them a profound gift, the dignity of simply existing without expectation. We say, without using a single word, "You do not have to entertain me. You do not have to be on. You are enough right here, right now, just breathing." And in that permission, the pressure valve releases. The shoulders drop a fraction of an inch. The brow, furrowed from the effort of trying to find words that won't come, smooths out. We swap the pressure of language for the presence of company. And here is the miracle that happens in the quiet. The silence stops being a wall between you. It transforms. It becomes a shared blanket. It becomes a room you occupy together. You might be reading an old newspaper. She might be looking out the window at a bird you haven't noticed. You are not doing the same thing, but you are doing it together. You are engaged in the most human of all activities, bearing witness to another's existence. This is where the real listening begins. It's not listening for words. It's listening for the breath. It's noticing the way the light falls on their hand. It's noticing the tiny, almost imperceptible sigh of relief that escapes their lips when they realize they don't have to try so hard anymore. That sigh, that is a full sentence. That is a paragraph. That is the whole story. You just have to be quiet enough and present enough to hear it. Sometimes the shared silence is enough. The simple act of being a warm body in a cold room is the entire conversation. But sometimes we are called to be a little more active in our listening. We are called to become translators of a lost tongue. And here we must make a crucial, counterintuitive leap. The words we use to reach them, they don't need to be ours. In fact, our words, the jargon of the 21st century, the references to streaming shows and political scandals, are just more static. They are noise in a system already overloaded with noise. The key to unlocking the vault is to use their words, the language of their prime, the vocabulary of a time when the world made sense, when their bodies were strong, and when their identity was not something fragile, but something solid and undeniable. We need to go back to the source material, the yellowed newspaper from 1975, the crackle of a vinyl record playing a song from their wedding year. The smell of a specific spice that hasn't been used in your kitchen for decades. These are not just triggers, they are passwords. This is not just nostalgia. It is a neurological hack. When we present the aging brain with a stimulus from the era of its peak synaptic density, we bypass the clogged, congested highways of the frontal lobe. We don't need to go through the broken gatekeeper. We access the limbic vault directly through a secret side door. So you sit on the porch with your father. His eyes are closed. He hasn't spoken a full sentence in 3 days. You don't ask him how he feels. You don't show him pictures on your phone. Instead, you open that brittle, yellowed newspaper from 1975. And you start to read, not the front page news, not the grim headlines of a world in turmoil. You read the sports section. You read the box scores. Fisk went 2 for 4. Yaz made that catch in left field. Your voice is low. It's a drone, it's an incantation. You're not looking for a response, you're just creating a soundscape, and then you see it. His eyes remain closed, but his breathing changes. It deepens, and a single tear escapes the corner of his closed eyelid. It catches the dying orange light of the sunset and gleams like a tiny, liquid jewel. We are conditioned to see a tear and think of sadness. We rush to wipe it away. Don't cry, Dad, it's okay. But stop, look at that tear again. That is not a tear of grief. That is a tear of recognition. It is the soul, for a fleeting moment, surfacing from the depths and saying, I'm here, I remember. Thank you. For just a second the fog lifted and I knew exactly who I was. I was 32 years old, I was strong. I was in the stands, I was alive. That tear is the most eloquent conversation you will ever have. It is a full autobiography in a single drop of saline. You didn't get a word, but you got the whole story. That is the highest form of hearing. That is a conversation without a single syllable. You spoke the language of his prime, and his soul answered back. We enter this world pre-verbal. We arrive screaming, covered in the evidence of our journey, unable to name our hunger, our cold, or our fear. We communicate in the raw, unfiltered voltage of need. A cry, a grip, a searching mouth, and for a time that is enough. We are held and we are understood. And for so many, the journey ends precisely where it began. We leave this world the same way we entered it. Not with a final, eloquent soliloquy, not with a neatly tied bow of parting words, but with a breath, and then a silence, a return to the pre-verbal state of the soul. The silence of aging is not a void to be feared. It is not a vacuum of loss. It is a full circle. It is the closing of a great cosmic loop. It is a return to the core of connection. A connection that never needed nouns and verbs to be true. The love that held you as an infant before you knew the word love is the same love that holds them now when the word love is too heavy to lift. Our job, our sacred duty as the ones left holding the vocabulary, is not to force the words back into their mouths. It is to become fluent in the new language. It is to learn to listen with our eyes, to see the prayer in the folded napkin, the pilgrimage in the traced wood grain. It is to learn to listen with our hands, to feel the Morse code in the tightened grip. It is to learn to listen with our patience, to master the art of sitting still in the sandbox of shared silence. Do not mourn the conversation that was lost. Do not grieve the witty father or the chatty mother who seems so far away. They are still in there, the vault is still full. They are just speaking a different dialect now, a quieter one, a truer one perhaps. Honor the conversation that is happening right now in the space between the breaths. Honor the tear of recognition. Honor the sigh of relief. Honor the simple, profound, unspeakable gift of presence. Listen closely. There is a lifetime being spoken in the silence. Don't let it go unheard. This is Human Truths TV. Stay with the quiet.